Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So, there was so much that was just wrong. There was so much that was wrong about Sarah Sanders being refused service at that restaurant in Lexington. So much wrong on either side. And I wish it was something we didn't have to discuss, because not only was it wrong, but it seems unbelievably petty. But it's an important and teachable moment for all of us, so we will discuss this, as unfortunate as it was, in just a little bit. First, though, let's you and I deal with something. Let's you and I deal with something significantly more important. Let's talk about music. Let's talk about the music that has moved you over the years. Let's talk about the bands that have worked their way into your DNA. Let's talk about the transformative experiences you've had while listening to and seeing music. I had one of those when I went and saw Megadeth for the first time. I was like middle school going into high school. And me and my buddy Greg, we got onto the subway, the Tube as we called it growing up in London, and made our way to the Hammersmith Odeon, excited to see Megadeth. I was stoked because this was my first ever thrash metal show. And, well, I was expecting something incredible. And I did get something incredible, but sadly not from Megadeth. Now, I gotta preface this by saying I've seen Megadeth many, many times since then. Went on to play with them a few times. And ever since then, they've been a real treat. They kicked ass and took names, but something about them just wasn't firing on all cylinders that night. There were a bunch of things that to my young mind didn't jive. There was this synchronized headbanging in the middle of the stage. There was all sorts of things that seemed more Spinal Tappy than real to me, and it just made me go, this is kind of weak. But I think the thing that perhaps made them, by comparison, seem a little less than they should have been that night was the fact that they were opened for by a band that more or less handed them their asses. This band that I'd heard about, this band that I heard a little of, but I'd never seen before. And that band was Pantera. And to this day, I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it in my life. It seemed as though they weren't necessarily on the ground, as opposed to permanently flying low. There was something so intense and so visceral and so fist-to-your-face real about what it was they were doing. And every member of that band was firing on all cylinders. The late, great Dimebag Darrell was one of the greatest rock guitar players of all time. A guy that had somehow managed to literally write the book, the definitive book on thrash metal guitar playing, while still maintaining the soul, the guts of an Eddie Van Halen, while still maintaining that joy for life that bands like that give you. It was this intense, heavy, aggressive, in-your-face, angry music, but somehow it was so unbelievably alive and so life-affirming, if that makes sense. Now, if you're like me, you believe that two things every single band must have are a great drummer and a great front person. Guitar players, bass players, they can be okay. They can have a style. They can have a thing. They can be subpar and sort of get away with it, depending on what else is going on in the band. And of course, like I said, Dimebag was one of the single greatest guitar players ever to walk the earth. So he was no slouch. But you need a great drummer and you need a great front person. And Pantera had that in a way that I don't think I've ever seen before or ever seen since. Straight down the middle, as you looked at the stage, you saw Phil Anselmo. Phil Anselmo, a man who was unchained, unleashed. A man who connected to that microphone and treated it like visceral, emotional scream therapy while having one of the most incredible rock voices ever. A man who, as it turns out, looked unhinged because, as we found out later on, was unhinged. And anchoring the whole thing was a man who looked like he was 10 feet tall behind the drum kit. A man called Vinnie Paul Abbot. And it's interesting because I actually met Vinnie Paul several times after that, as an adult, as a guy in radio, as a guy in bands. And like I said, he seemed like he was 10 feet tall. So I was really surprised to find out that he was, well, he about came up to my chest when I met him in person. A guy who played drums like a god of thunder, who was surprisingly diminutive, with smaller hands than you'd ever imagine than someone with that amount of power should have when you shook them. And we lost him recently.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
You know what's so incredible about the drumming of Vinnie Paul? Just have a listen. So amazing. Vinnie Paul had chops to spare. He was one of the most technically accomplished drummers on the face of the planet. But more than that, he was an absolute beast. And he had a groove, he had soul, he had guts to what he was doing. A lot of people that fell into that sort of musical genre, that sort of like heavy or thrashy music, they were excellent technicians. But it was like they were putting on a technical clinic when they played. The magic that existed between Vinnie Paul and his drummer, his brother Dime, came from the fact that they had groove, and like I said, they had heart and they had soul, and they had years and years of listening to Van Halen records together. He had a real swing to his playing that comes from, I don't know, like I said, Pantera had this unbelievable quality to them where they were aggressive and cathartic and hard and fast and heavy and in your face, but also incredibly life affirming in the same way. And I think so much of that comes from the fact that Vinnie Paul played with so much soul. I mean, he just kicked ass and took names. Like I said, an absolute beast of a drummer, a man who's capable of putting on a technical clinic, or a man who was capable of putting on a technical clinic, yet still had, like I said, guts and soul and swing and heart to what he did. A man who meant so much to the rock community and so much to the drumming community, and a man who is sadly no longer with us. Drummer Vinnie Paul from Pantera and Hell Yeah died this past Friday, just gone by. He was only 54 years old. There's no word yet on the cause of death. TMZ said he died in his sleep in Las Vegas. I actually met him in Vegas. Well, I met him in Vegas a couple different times, but most recently when I saw him, it was in Vegas, and it was in February. And, you know, while I'd met him a few different times, it was one of the few times I got an opportunity to talk to him and say, hey, man, back when I was a kid, I saw you more or less hand Megadeth their asses on stage at the Hammersmith Odeon in London. You were so incredible that night. And it was a night that forever changed my life. And a night that introduced me to new music that I've carried with me my entire life. And he was so nice. He was so kind. He was so grateful. And he absolutely remembered the show. It was a good time. And like I said, he was a man who behind the kit seemed like Andre the Giant. Like he must have been like 15 feet tall. Yet surprisingly diminutive when you met him in person. For a guy that played drums like that. Surprisingly small hands when you shook them, but warm and open and gregarious. And a great ambassador for heavy music everywhere he went. A real lover of heavy music everywhere he went. There's all sorts of bands that have these stories of him just randomly showing up at their shows. because he likes music. He liked music. He paid attention to what was coming out. He truly cared about music. It really meant something to him. He wasn't a disaffected rock star that didn't get what he got out of music when he was a kid. And I think that's something that made his playing so special. He played drums like a 16-year-old kid that still got hit in the face by the music that meant the most to him. And I think he truly did. And that's probably why he was such a fantastic ambassador for music wherever he went. Specifically this music, specifically heavy music. Because, well, he truly loved it and lived it until his very last moments. Vinnie and his brother, Dimebag Darrell Abbott, in case you did not know, formed Pantera back in 1981. They added singer Phil Anselmo in 1987. And then when Cowboys from Hell came out, it was game over. They shot to fame. Vinnie and Dime dissolved the band back in 2003 due to disagreements with Anselmo. The brothers went on to form Damage Plan, but during a show in Ohio in 2004, a man jumped on stage with a gun and started shooting, killing Dimebag and 3 other people. 2 years later, Vinnie formed Hell Yeah. They released 5 really great albums. Their most recent, Undeniable, came out in 2016 and was far and away their best yet. Anyways, we are brokenhearted and in shock. His family thanks you for the kind words and support in a tragic time. The guys in Hell Yeah said, "We don't have anything much to say other than the fact that Vinnie is now with Dime and they are together in a better place. Sadness, shock, confusion, anger, despair, we feel it all together. Hug your loved ones and keep them close. Thank you all again for your love. Vinnie will be and is greatly loved and missed, but his music will live forever. Crank it loud today and scream to the heavens so that he can hear you." Good night, Vinnie Paul Abbott. And thank you. Thank you so much for everything.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
You know, I'm almost loath to discuss it just because in so many ways it's so wrong and it's just creating more of a divide. And I think that's what we're going to talk about on the show today. But we should probably mention what happened with Sarah Huckabee Sanders in that restaurant in Lexington, Kentucky. First, though, let's take a listen to some of this. You know, the BET Awards went down this past night, just gone by, and a police officer tried to shut down a live red carpet interview before the BET Awards. Have a listen to this.
Who designed this tonight? Because I need that look.
Man, styled by Brian Javar, man. This is grayscale. Did both of us. Absolutely, really dope.
Shut down. You got done. Go back where you're going. You're done.
Excuse me, sir. Well, you know we're live on TV.
We're live on television right now, sir.
You know what? What's up? No.
Because you guys don't pay attention to what you're
we're live. We'll be back, sir. It's okay, sir. It's all right. You can handle that.
My father is a firefighter.
The security coming on
he
in.
is.
It's okay. Because nobody shuts
it
down.
It just got real, you guys.
So, we'll be right back with more after the break. Officer Andrews, let's talk. We'll be right back. Don't move, guys.
As broadcasters, that was rather smooth. It was well covered. But, I mean, bottom line is if a cop tells you shut down, you're shut down. There's probably a reason. They are literally, I will never forget when I first came to America. When I first came to America, I was this punk kid in a band. And before we set foot into a tour bus or a van, our tour manager had a little chat with us. They're like, I don't know what things are like in England, where you're from, but here in America, we're going to have to make it to venues and places on time. And if you disagree with what a cop's telling you, there's a time and a place for that. But wherever you get pulled over, wherever you're stopped by a cop, whether it's in the street, on the road, the police officer in that case is literally the embodiment of the law. And so you kind of have to deal with it. If you want to fight it, you can fight it at a later time, but just go with it. This was the advice I got from my tour manager, who'd had plenty of run-ins with cops as a punk rock kid himself before he became a responsible adult. But he's like, they're literally the embodiment of the law. And if you try and fight it there on the spot, you could be going to jail and we might not get to the next show on time. So just go with it when a cop approaches you in this country. And that always stuck with me. They're literally the embodiment of the law. And I mean, like I said, the broadcasters at the BET Award coped with it admirably well when they were shut down live on TV by a cop. But that whole sort of like protest, the protest that was going on, especially the part where I don't even know who it was, but where one presenter was like, my father's a firefighter. Like, that really matters. That's going to help. I mean, I'm sure the broadcast went on and things were sorted out. But yeah, it's always worth recognizing that whenever you encounter a police officer, they are literally the embodiment of the law. Except for this guy, who is no longer the embodiment of the law because he lost his job after pulling over his daughter's boyfriend.
You can get out. For what? You're going to jail. For what? Get out. For what? Have a seat in my car. We'll make it up as we go. Any guns, knives, weed on you? What's that? Obviously. Go ahead and get smart before I can do something to you even more.
Yeah. Like I said, literally the embodiment of the law, no matter how they choose to abuse it. A police officer in Ohio who lost his job because he pulled over his daughter's boyfriend trying to interfere with their relationship. At first, he threatened to put the guy in jail, but he eventually let him go when he realized his daughter was actually in the car. Let's keep listening.
Goodbye.
What?
Goodbye.
What?
Goodbye. Get in my car.
You can't. You can't take me. I am 18.
Goodbye.
You can't take her in. She's an adult.
Goodbye.
Hey, you can get back in the car. You're in the
No, you're not. Get in my car.
Why are you taking me?
Get in my car.
Why are you taking me? You have to give me a reason. By law, why are you pushing me? Why are you pushing me? Why are you doing this? Turn on your camera, guys. Turn it on.
Get in my car.
You can't arrest me for no reason. You can't. You can't.
Keep me! Knock it off!
You don't want me! I know! Why you can't do this?
Like I said, he is no longer the embodiment of the law because he lost his job. But that was his daughter screaming at him because he'd pulled her boyfriend over, not realizing she was in the car. While a cop is literally the embodiment of the law, sometimes the folks who get badges and guns aren't necessarily equipped to deal with the responsibility, I suppose. A woman in San Francisco recently called the police on an 8-year-old girl. Speaking of the law and its abuses, a woman in San Francisco called the cops on an 8-year-old girl trying to get her in trouble for selling bottled water without a permit. The girl's name is Jordan, and she was selling to people outside the Giant Stadium trying to raise money for a trip to Disneyland. Jordan's mom took a video, and it went viral, and a guy ended up buying Jordan 4 tickets to Disney. But also the woman who made the call admitted later that she handled it all wrong.
This woman don't want to let a little girl sell some water. She calling the police on an 8-year-old little girl. You can hide all you want. The whole world gonna see you, boo.
Yeah, and illegally selling water without a permit? Yeah.
On my property.
It's not your property. You're on the...
Anyways, there's all sorts of different interpretations. I suppose we've been listening to this because there's all sorts of different interpretations about what's right, what's wrong, what's okay, what's not okay in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of our rights as laid down by the Constitution. Now, if you're like me, you believe that a private business gets to serve who they want to serve or not serve who they want to serve. And if that means something incredibly short-sighted, like not baking a cake for a gay wedding because you think that it's going to blow it with God for you, when you get to the pearly gates, St. Peter's going to be like, no, oh yeah, no. You made the cake for that wedding. Sorry, you're going to HE double hockey sticks. If you are that short-sighted and that fearful in terms of how you go through life, well, then that's very sad, and that's your problem. But I believe that this is America, and we have a certain amount of free will, especially if we are business owners or if we put our hard work into something. And I think private businesses should be allowed to make their choice about who they're going to serve. Like, if you decide that you don't want to serve people who wear socks with sandals, I'm all in on that idea. Or if you decide that you want to not serve people who wear Nationals jerseys on a day when the Mets are playing, then I'm in on that one as well. I believe in letting the market punish or reward people for their actions. And I believe that that is the best interpretation of the Constitution that there is. Do I think it's short-sighted and bigoted and all sorts of horrible for a cake place to refuse service to someone because they're gay and they're getting ready for their gay wedding? Yeah, absolutely. That's unbelievably stupid. That's unbelievably short-sighted. That's a horrible, awful, miserable thing to do. And I believe that the market should punish you for your actions in those cases. What's interesting is a restaurant in Lexington refused to serve Sarah Sanders. And, I think you've probably seen the owner of that restaurant making the cable news rounds today. I haven't seen any myself, but it's got to be a thing, right? This must be happening. Red Hen restaurant employees took to social media to brag about turning Sanders away. One posted photo of the restaurant's whiteboard declaring 86 Sarah Sanders. In case you didn't know, the term 86 is restaurant jargon that means that an item has been removed from the menu or refusal of service. She tweeted, "Last night I was told by the owners of Red Head in Lexington, Virginia to leave because I work for @POTUS," meaning Donald Trump, and I politely left. Her actions say far more about her than about me. I always do my best to treat people, including those I disagree with, respectfully, and will continue to do so. So there you have it. Now, like I said, I believe that if you have a business that you built from the ground up, if you are the owner of a business, it is down to you how you practice business. As long as you're not breaking the law, it's sort of up to you. And if you're going to do something bigoted, then you should let the market punish or reward you for those actions. Ultimately, we still live in America. Ultimately, when somebody decides to refuse somebody's service based on their religion, their race, any of the above, some sort of discriminatory practice, this is the part that makes democracy complicated. This is the same thing that allows the KKK to march through the streets with their hateful, awful, terrible, egregious, miserable opinions. And while I believe that, it is interesting because the same people that were clamoring for equality and saying that everybody must be served regardless of what their belief or sexuality is are the same people that are high-fiving, whether it be online or in person, the Red Hen folks that had kicked out Sarah Sanders because she worked for Donald Trump. So it's a weird one. It's a contradictory one. It's an unfortunate one. And it is one that widens a divide. It is one that makes people further apart as opposed to bringing them closer together. And it did not help. I don't know if you caught it or not, but it did not help what Maxine Waters did. Did you catch this? Now, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know that in no way, shape, or form am I a Donald Trump fan. I believe all boats will rise as the tide does, though. And I want whatever comes out of Donald Trump's presidency to be as positive as possible for every last person in America. And, like I said, in the spirit of two wrongs not making a right, what Maxine Waters did, doesn't really help. She spoke to liberals in Louisiana, and Waters called on them to harass and intimidate Trump cabinet officials that they see in public. What the hell are we doing at this stage in the game? She told the crowd, if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. She told them to do this because God is on our side. Okay. All right. As much as I believe in your voice as an American, as much as I believe that your voice as an American is an essential way to move forward, whether you agree with Trump, whether you disagree with Trump, whether you think that in any way, shape, or form, he's doing the right thing, or you want to see the back of him, and you want to see the back of him quickly. I can tell you one thing. Creating a mob and forcing people out of the places that they're in as a member of the public, because God is on your side, does no one any good. It's freaking ridiculous. It's absolutely the wrong thing to do. It's absolutely the wrong thing to suggest. Whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, whether you're some sort of in the middle, upside down, left, back, up, right, sideways, whatever the hell you are, saying to people that voted for you, saying to people that you have a voice to speak to, hey, if you see people that you disagree with, you create a crowd and you push back on them. You let them know they're not welcome anywhere. Why? Because God is on your side. There's been a lot of talk. Recently. And this was the case during Obama's administration, and this was the case during Donald Trump's administration. And you know what? We don't seem to be settling down. So whoever the hell the next person in office is, I'm sure we're going to hear some sort of similar rhetoric. But there's been a lot of talk recently where they're like, this is like Nazis. This is like Nazis. And let's not cheapen what happened during the Holocaust by saying, this is like Nazis. This is like Hitler. This is like what happened in Nazi Germany. None of what's happened, because it doesn't involve mass genocide, holds a candle to what happened with regard to World War II and Hitler and his agenda. So let's not cheapen the experience. But when I hear someone, anyone, whether it be white supremacists, whether it be Democrats talking about Trump's constituents, saying, you push back, you tell them they're not welcome anymore, you tell them to get out, because God is on our side, not theirs. That, my friend is officially the slippery slope. And we do not want to go down.
God is on our side. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. We will see you every day, every hour of the day, everywhere that we are, to let you know you cannot get away with this. Thank you so very much.
Now, more AD on the radio.
So one interesting wrinkle with the Sarah Huckabee Sanders tweet is that it might have been illegal. White House press secretary, in case you're just joining us, Sarah Huckabee Sanders tweeted about the Red Hen restaurant in Virginia. And, well, apparently she violated ethics law when she did so. When she used her official White House Twitter account to complain about being kicked out of a Virginia restaurant, according to the former head of the U.S. Office of Government Ethics, she violated the law. Sanders complained on her @PressSec Twitter account about the Red Hen restaurant. She was refused service when she was there, and she tweeted, "Because I work for POTUS." Stephanie Wilkinson told the Washington Post that Sanders was told to leave because the business has certain standards to uphold, such as honesty and compassion and cooperation. There's this dude, Walter Schaub. He left the Trump administration a year ago after 5 years as head of the ethics office. And he posted this super sort of annoyed tweet in response to Sarah Sanders' comment, saying that it's a violation of federal ethics law to name specific businesses with the intent of personal gain or retaliation. So there you go. It's an interesting wrinkle. We're not entirely sure if it's going to be pursued, but in the State of the Union on CNN, Representative Barbara Lee, who's a Democrat from California, called on the Office of Government Ethics to investigate Sanders for using her official Twitter account to attack the restaurant. So there you have it. Walter Schaub said, Sarah, I know you don't care even a tiny little bit about ethics rules, but using your official account is a clear violation of, and he cites a specific law. It's the same as if an ATF agent pulled out his badge when a restaurant tried to throw him or her out. It's an interesting one, right? The law details the basic obligation of public service, and it requires that employees shall act impartially and not give preferential treatment to any private organization or individual. Apparently, she can lob attacks on her own time, but not using her official position. This guy that used to work for Obama, a guy called Ian Bassin, said that it violates federal ethics rules as well. And he said, at the White House, we train all staff that they couldn't use their White House titles or resources like Twitter accounts for personal uses. The red hen has been embraced by the people that have a problem with Trump, but slammed by supporters of Trump and Sanders. This is why Sanders and Trump go together like peas and carrots. That sort of like snarky one-upmanship, the whataboutism, that gets us absolutely nowhere. That's part and parcel of how we are acting as a nation. I'm ashamed to say we are acting as a nation in the year 2018. She is only too happy to weigh into it. She is only too happy to play with the lines of what is and what is not okay. She is only too happy to say, you can tell me it's wrong, but I question that. Alternative facts, fake news, all of the above. We live in a day where every last word is open to interpretation, and most of those interpretations of laws and things of that nature are because people are bending, people are abusing, people are questioning. And I'm a big fan of questions, but there is, like I said, a certain standards. That's why that's why we have an ethics committee. That's why there are laws about ethics and the way politicians must conduct themselves within the bounds of those ethics. Because we as taxpayers would like to think for one teeny tiny second that the people that we've elected to serve us as the public servants that they are will be held to a certain standard of behavior, so we feel as though our tax dollars are being well spent. Are they? I don't know. There is a right way to stand up for what you believe in. I don't know if you caught this or not. I don't know if you support it or not. But Seth Rogen was on The Late Show on Friday talking about turning down Paul Ryan for a picture in front of his two sons.
At one point, two young, white, teenage men asked to take a picture with me. They're maybe like 16, 17. And then they said, our dad wants to meet you. And I turned around. Paul Ryan was walking towards me.
Oh, okay.
And he came over, just grabbed my hand, and I'm shaking his head. I don't know what to do. And he said, can I have a picture with you? And I said, no way, man. And I look over and his kids are still standing right there. And I feel very conflicted about this at this moment.
Because it's not their fault.
It's not their fault, but at the same time, they should probably learn that if they like a movie or song, the person who made that probably doesn't like their dad that much.
It's funny. It's amusing. And you know what? He was well within his right to do that. And I think that folks like the Red Hen are well within their right to refuse service. Because they don't feel as though Sarah Sanders really kind of lives up to the standards that they like to set within their restaurant. And if someone decides that they're going to be bigoted and small-minded or fearful enough of whatever bigoted, small-minded notion that has been pounded into their head by religion over the years, that they want to refuse service to a gay couple who is looking to have a cake made for their gay wedding because they think it's going to send them to hell, well, that's kind of their thing. But the bottom line is you can't have it both ways. And I wish people weren't bigoted, and I wish there were cakes for all. And I wish people would recognize that we're all on the same side. That left, right, up, down, we're all Americans. We're all in it together. We're all trying to move forward. We all want the same stuff. We just have some different ideas about how we're going to get there. And maybe if we could not concentrate on the social media likes that come from saying you just got thrown out of a restaurant, or the social media likes that come from saying that you just kicked somebody out of your restaurant. And just focus on the fact that, like I said, we are all in it together, and stop squabbling amongst ourselves like children. Maybe we could get where we're going a little bit faster.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KBRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So did you see who was, well, a guy that did not vote for Donald Trump, but says he might be one of the greatest presidents in the history of presidents, perhaps the greatest president ever, and not necessarily because he thinks he's that freaking fantastic at what he does. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting perspective, and if you're not a Donald Trump fan, it might be a piece of perspective that you enjoy. And if you are a Donald Trump fan, it might also be a piece of perspective that you enjoy. And you know what? I am all in favor of anything that unites us. So we're going to talk about who it was that said, despite the fact that he didn't vote for him, Donald Trump could be the greatest president in history. In case you missed it, Seth Rogen let House Speaker Paul Ryan know that he's not a fan in the most brutal way possible. On The Late Show Friday night, Seth said he was at a summit on brain health organized by Mitt Romney when two teenage boys approached him for a photo, but then their dad came up to get a picture, and it was Ryan. So Seth refused and told Ryan, quote, "I hate what you're doing to the country at this moment, and I count the days until you no longer have one iota of the power that you currently have." Here, let's take another listen for a moment, shall we?
At one point, two young, white, teenage men asked to take a picture with me. They're maybe like 16, 17. And then they said, "Our dad wants to meet you." And I turned around. Paul Ryan was walking towards me.
Oh, okay.
And he came over, just grabbed my hand, and I'm just like, I'm shaking his hand. I don't know what to do. And he said, "Can I have a picture with you?" And I said, "No way, man." And I look over and his kids are still standing right there. And I feel very conflicted about this at this moment.
Because it's not their fault.
It's not their fault, but at the same time, they should probably learn that if they like a movie or song, the person who made that probably doesn't like their dad that much.
Yeah. Now, look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what Seth Rogen did. It was a difficult call to make, and he's also got his career to consider. I mean, look, it's not just a moral thing, but anytime that you are... When somebody takes a photo of you with a politician, you are giving that politician your tacit approval. And you know what? If Seth Rogen relies on people that have a big problem with Paul Ryan and the like buying his movie tickets, then you know it doesn't serve him. It might not even be a moral situation. Dolly Parton once said, when people pressed her on politics, "Of course I have an opinion. Of course I have opinions about politics and politicians, what's right and what's wrong. But you know what? I don't want to insult half my audience by weighing in on this sort of thing. So you're not going to get me to do it." which I really like. I mean, the whole what would Dolly do thing, that applies definitely in the world of politics. And so maybe Seth Rogen was self-serving. Maybe he was taking a political stand. I don't know. But it's just indicative of something that I wish we didn't have to deal with. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know that I'm not a fan of the two-party system, that I don't believe in the two-party system, that I believe that the restrictions placed on us in the two-party system, things like us not being allowed to take part in the primaries unless we are registered as something or another. I've got a big problem with that. And I have a big problem with people defining themselves. I think people fight so hard to get you to define yourself as a Republican or a Democrat because they want to know that you're not going to stop thinking about it and you're just going to, in a blind, knee-jerk, reactionary sort of way, vote. Well, I'm a Republican, so I voted straight, take a Republican. Well, I'm a Democrat, so I voted straight, take a Democrat. Do you know about each individual that you voted for and what their thoughts and policies and leadership look like? Well, no, but I know which party I'm in, so I'm just going to vote for that. Such a dangerous way of thinking. The division is predicated on removing thought from our political process. The division that politicians on the left and the right seek to create is there solely to make their lives easier, make our votes easier to count on, make us blinder, make us more willing to toe the line. It's got this label on it, so I must agree with it, right? No, not so much. And the big problem with it is division often comes from fear. You're told by whoever the hell your politician of choice is that the other side is coming for you. They're coming for your way of life. They're going to make things difficult. They're going to send the world into fiery blazes and we're all going to die in an apocalypse because they're the person with their finger on the button. Or they want to take everything that you've worked for and redistribute it. Everything that you've worked so hard for in your life, they think somebody else deserves that. Do you think somebody else deserves that? Because we don't. Oh, you don't? Okay, good. Well, you should be afraid, but fortunately you've got me to advocate for you, so therefore you should give me your money and your vote. I'm going to need some campaign finance so I can protect what's yours. You don't want them to get what's yours, so give me what's yours, and then I'll go fight so you can keep the rest of it moving forward. And the division, it's just to remove thought. And that's why I have a real problem with the idea of Republicans and Democrats. I have a real problem with Republicans and Democrats. And look, we're always going to have parties. Maybe it's a two-party system. Maybe another party starts to get taken seriously. But the idea that we assign a label to ourselves is solely so that we remove thinking from our process. If we weren't Democrats, if we weren't Republicans, if we were just Americans, if we were just people, it would be so much easier to remember that we're on the same team. Why? Because there's no clearly defined group of other people that can take the blame, can shoulder the blame, can become a scapegoat. A politician can't get on stage and go, those people that are easily defined as Republicans or those people that are easily defined as Democrats, they're looking to destroy your way of life and take everything that you hold dear and mangle it and horribly beyond recognition. And I'm the only person that wants to save you from all of this, so therefore you should vote for me. If they didn't have that crutch, if they didn't have that ease with which to divide us, it wouldn't be so easy to apportion a scapegoat. We could actually look at some of our problems together and say, what are we going to do about that? Other than blame it on a group of people because they're registered as this. We could just live our lives and sort out our problems if we weren't so busy and preoccupied with labels. So I get it. I understand taking a stand. I understand refusing Sarah Huckabee Sanders' service in your restaurant because you feel she doesn't match the caliber of clientele that you would like to have in your place of business, and that's your right as defined by the Constitution. I get not letting Paul Ryan's kids take a picture with you or not letting Paul Ryan take a picture with you because you disagree with what they've done fundamentally, and they're easy to sort of lump into a group of folks. And in fact, Seth Rogen's thing might be really more based on an individual account of what Paul Ryan himself has done. And if it's based on Paul Ryan, the individual, as opposed to Paul Ryan, the party that he's in, then you know what? I think that's the right way to go through life. But if we didn't have these blanket terms and labels to justify our actions, if we had to look at people as people and not as an R or a D, or not as a person that voted or did not vote for a certain person that's very controversial and divisive that happens to be the most powerful man on the planet at the moment, if we didn't have these easy labels to apply to folks, well, we'd probably get a lot more done. And for that reason, I would encourage you in your daily life, as difficult as it is, as much as you might be tempted to shout someone down that disagrees with you, or shout someone down in principle because they are of a different party than you, because they voted differently than you, because they believe in a different leader than you, I would encourage you to see beyond that and see the person. I know a lot of people that voted for Trump. I know a lot of people that voted for Trump that are not necessarily all that into Trump as a human being. They just thought it was the best thing. They thought it was the best thing. They felt like Hillary should have been indicted. I know a couple of Democrats that voted for Trump for a couple of reasons. One, they felt like Trump was just a Democrat in disguise. He was a Democrat until about a second and a half before he announced that he was going to run for president. And they genuinely felt as though Hillary should have been indicted, and that she really was crooked and they didn't trust her. She was entirely too hawkish and lawbreaking of a figure to have her be at the head of everything. And they felt like Donald Trump, as much as he was just a difficult person to take, was really a Democrat in disguise. So they voted for him, thinking this could be the way to go. This could be the right way to go. Because ultimately, he's just more into the idea of being president, having the title, and, well, hopefully he'll leave the actual getting things done up to other folks. I know actual Democrats that voted for Trump. And they don't feel comfortable talking about it. They feel judged at every turn. I know people that are in no way, shape, or form bigoted or hateful. People that I really respect. People that are very intelligent. People that are the absolute antithesis of every Trump voter and the way the media paints Trump voters. Great folks that just thought that was the best move, with no hate or malice in their heart toward anyone. Not a reactionary, we've got to protect our stuff from these people move, but just that's who I wanted to vote for. And you know what? Ultimately, who cares? Who cares? Maybe they were right, maybe they were wrong. But the day we remove that label from them, the day we make it sort of okay for them to have had their opinion and acted upon this, the day we sort of accept them and go, well, I don't know. I certainly didn't do that. I didn't think that was the right move, but I still respect you as a human being. And that's just what you thought was the best. We can still get along. We can still have a beer together. We can still have a sandwich together. We can still go to a game together. The second we recognize all this stuff, the better off we're going to be. So I'm tired. I'm tired of us calling ourselves Republicans and Democrats. And I really hope that you, me, all of us can bear in mind that no matter what's going on, no matter how much you disagree with someone, that we're Americans. That's who we are. And if we remove these titles, there's no easy way to scapegoat someone else for our problems. We roll up our sleeves and we deal with them ourselves. Politicians get less of our hard-earned dollar because we're not supporting them to fight someone that's on our same side. We've got more for ourselves, more time for ourselves, more energy for ourselves. We disabuse ourselves of this notion that these folks, these public servants, are really out there to serve us. And we wind up getting so much more done because we've rolled up our sleeves, we've taken personal responsibility for ourselves, and we've done what the hell it is we need to do to get through the day. So yeah, whatever the problem is, remember, whatever the problem is in your life, when you wake up in the morning and the things that you've got on your mind, they're not the fault of an individual that voted differently than you. And the quicker we all get to remembering that, the quicker we all get where we're going. A challenge for you today is to see people, as Americans, as individuals, and not as some amorphous blob that you agree or disagree with. Try it for a day, then try it a day after that. And keep trying to do it every single day. And let's see where it gets us. Thank you so much for hanging out.